Returning from a trip, I found my things on the lawn with a note: "If you want to stay here, live in the basement." So I moved into my secret apartment and cancelled all payments. 6 months later, they showed up to move in with me. I'm Zoya, and I'm 29 years old. 2 years ago, my life took a turn I never expected. I was living in a rented apartment, working as a software developer, making decent money and enjoying my independence. Then my parents called me with that conversation no one wants to have. "Zoya, we need to talk," my mom said over the phone. Her voice sounded strained, tired. "Can you come over tonight?" But I got to their house, both my parents were sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread everywhere. Dad looked older than his 58 years, and Mom was wringing her hands like she always did when she was stressed. "What's going on?" I asked, sitting down across from them. Dad cleared his throat. "I had to quit my job last month. My back problems got worse, and I can't do construction work anymore. I've been looking for something else, but nothing pays enough." My stomach dropped. I knew Dad had been having health issues, but I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. "We can't make the mortgage payments," Mom continued. "I'm still working at the grocery store, but it's only part-time. They bring in maybe $1,200 a month now, and the mortgage alone is $1,800. That's when they asked me to move back in and help with the payments. They didn't want to lose the house they'd lived in for 20 years. I looked around at the kitchen where I'd eaten breakfast every morning as a kid, at the living room where we watched movies together, at the backyard where Dad had taught me to ride a bike. "Of course," I said. "I'll help." So, I gave up my apartment and moved back into my childhood bedroom. It felt weird at first, sleeping in the same room where I'd done homework and had sleepovers with friends. But I set up my computer in the corner, got a good internet connection, and made it work. Most of my job was remote anyway, so it didn't matter where I lived. The arrangement worked out better than I expected. I made good money as a developer, around $85,000 a year in salary. But the real money came from bonuses. Every time one of my programs got sold to a big tech company, I got a percentage. Some months, I'd make an extra $10,000 or $15,000 just from those bonuses. I used my regular salary to cover the mortgage, utilities, groceries, car insurance, and other family expenses. It wasn't a burden because I was used to living on that amount anyway. But here's what my family didn't know. I was putting every single bonus into a separate savings account. I never told them about the bonus money. Not my parents. Not my older brother Marcus, who lived across town with his wife Sandra and their 2 kids. I loved my family, but I knew what would happen if they found out about my real income. They'd find ways to spend it. Marcus was always asking for money. "Hey, Zoya, can you lend me $500? Tommy needs new soccer cleats and Sandra wants to redo the kitchen." "Zoya, Sandra's mom needs surgery, and we're short on the medical bills." I helped when I could from my regular salary, but I kept quiet about the bonuses. In 2 years, I'd saved up almost $180,000. I was planning to buy my own place soon, maybe a nice condo downtown. Everything was going smoothly except for family dinners. Marcus and Sandra came over every Sunday, and those meals were torture. Sandra had never liked me, and she made sure I knew it. "Zoya, what is that shirt?" Sandra would say, looking at me like I'd crawled out of a dumpster. "You dress like you're still in high school. Don't you care about your appearance?" Marcus would laugh. "Sandra's just trying to help you, sis. She knows about fashion." The worst part was watching Sandra show off clothes she'd bought with money Marcus had borrowed from me. She'd parade around in a new designer dress, talking about how important it was to invest in quality pieces. I usually escaped to my room as soon as I could, claiming I had work to do. I'd hear Sandra's voice carry up the stairs. "There she goes again, running back to hide in her little bubble. She'll never grow up if she keeps avoiding real life." But I kept my mouth shut and kept saving money. Soon I'd have enough for a down payment on my own place, and I wouldn't have to deal with Sandra's comments anymore. A routine became normal after a while. I'd wake up, make coffee, check my emails, and start coding. My parents would be quiet in the mornings. Dad usually sitting in his recliner watching the news. Mom getting ready for her shift at the store. We'd eat dinner together most nights. And it was actually nice having the family time again. But then Sunday would come around and Marcus would pull up in his driveway with Sandra and the kids. 8-year-old Tommy and 6-year-old Emma would burst through the door and Sandra would follow behind, already looking for something to criticize. "Oh Zoya, you're wearing that old sweater again," she'd say, not even bothering with hello. "Don't you have anything that fits you properly?" I'd look down at my perfectly fine sweater, the one I'd bought just last month. "It's comfortable," I'd say. "Comfortable isn't everything," Sandra would reply, smoothing down her own expensive blouse. "A woman needs to make an effort." The kids would run around the house and Sandra would plant herself on the couch like she owned the place. She'd start telling my parents about her latest shopping trips, her yoga classes, her friends' drama. Meanwhile, Marcus would be in the kitchen with Dad talking about sports or complaining about his job. "Marcus is working so hard," Sandra would announce. "He deserves a promotion, but his boss doesn't appreciate him." I bite my tongue, remembering all the times Marcus had called me asking for money because he'd been passed over for a raise or bonus. He was a good guy, but he wasn't the most reliable employee. Sandra, however, made it sound like he was the hardest worker in America. The worst part was when Sandra would start giving me life advice. "You know, Zoya, you should be dating, having fun, maybe thinking about starting a family of your own." What she didn't understand was that I was perfectly happy with my life. I had a good job. I was helping my parents and I was building a future for myself. I didn't need her approval or her advice. I needed a break from the family drama. So, I visited my friend Jessica at her country house for the weekend. When I came back Sunday night, I saw too many cars in the driveway and lights on in every room. I walked up to the front door and saw toys scattered on the porch. I opened the door to chaos. Tommy and Emma were running around the living room. Marcus was carrying boxes upstairs and Sandra was directing everything like she owned the place. "What's going on?" I asked, standing in the doorway with my overnight bag. Everyone stopped and looked at me. My parents came out of the kitchen looking guilty. Marcus set down his box.